Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Why No One Plays. It's a series where I talk about unpopular or obscure champions in League of Legends, especially over the most recent years. Last episode I talked about Kalista, but I want to stay in bot lane a little bit longer because we have someone else who also has a really low following, Sivir, the Battle Mistress. If this is your first time watching one of these videos, I want to establish that obviously people do play Sivir, so the title of the video is not meant to be taken literally. The point of Why No One Plays is to bring forth discussion about what makes them not an appealing champion to the general player base, and hopefully this video can also raise more awareness about the champion and encourage some viewers to give them a try. For those who do main Sivir, I'd love to hear your own experiences with her and why you've decided to choose her as your main even though very few people do. But for the rest of us, let's get started. While Kalista has seen much less playtime than Sivir, the latter beats out the former in terms of instability. Despite being the subject for today's episode, she's not exactly what you would call an unpopular pick. Ever since Season 5, she's had several points in time where she was actually quite contested. Only since around late Season 9 has she been fielded less frequently. In fact, her pick rate drastically fell off a cliff from a staggering 20% at her peak in mid-2019 down to an abysmal 2-3% for almost 2 years now, far below the average 5% line most conventional bot laners usually hold. And despite being a very old-fashioned AD carry, Sivir is a household name among a lot of veteran players. She takes the first place title of the AD carry with the best wave clear in the game, and is an incredibly effective siege and anti-siege champion, being able to completely invalidate minion waves. At least, that's how it was back then, when wave clearing was a rare talent. Over the past decade, the game was balanced around most champions' main damaging tools, such as their Q, to be able to one-shot cast your minions with just one item, such as Ahri Q, Echo Q, Darius Q, LeBlanc W, things like that. ADCs, as you know, use auto attacks as their DPS, with their damaging abilities serving mostly as poke or chip damage, that is, Ashe's Volley, Lucian's Piercing Light, and so on. Sivir was really effective in this department because she exceeded every AD carry in the game by a wide margin when it came to pushing waves. It made her a very strong pick in macro or teamfight oriented compositions. The coup de grace of her appeal was her, at the time, unique but powerful ability to augment her entire team's tempo and mobility, which cemented her as the best teamfight AD carry in the game, which I'll get to in a little bit. Simply put, if you were looking for a hypercarry marksman, when enabled, Sivir was the best champion for that. Remember, this was prior to the inclusion of all the newer AD carries like Xayah, Kai'Sa, Samira, Aphelios, to name a few. And it's because of the advent of new champions, not just in the bot lane but in every role, that Sivir has now fallen from grace. Leading me to my first point. She's an old champion. Most if not all her abilities are not really anything special in this day and age. Her hypercarry status has been more or less overshadowed by other 1v9ers like Kai'Sa, Aphelios, and Samira, who either deal more damage than her or can survive better in a fight thanks to self-peel or lockdown potential. So let's quickly go over Sivir's kit, starting with her passive. Fleet of Foot grants her a boost of movement speed when damaging champions. Why does it sound familiar? Because there are items that literally do the same thing. Stridebreaker and Triforce have a similar passive that gives you movement speed whenever you deal damage. Items like Phantom Dancer grant you 7% bonus movement speed on hit. There are other AD carries with way better movement speed boosts in their passives, such as Samira's Daredevil Impulse. It gives up to 21%. Vayne gets 30 permanently when moving towards champions, triple to 90 with her ultimate. Other champions gain this boost in their regular abilities, such as Xayah, who gets 30% movement speed instead of a flat 35 to 55. Essentially, Sivir was able to dance around a fight really well back when most AD carries were slow and immobile, but nowadays everyone is much faster than they used to be. Boomerang Blade is a strong damaging tool that has an insane 260% total AD ratio if you take the full damage on both shots, but the ability decreases in damage for every minion or monster hit to balance out its clearing potential. In teamfights, a well-thrown Q can half health just about any squishy champion. That being said, that's all it does, just damage. And the ability itself has a massively high mana cost of 110 at max level, meaning you can't spam this like you would spam Lucian Q, Jhin Q, Ashe W, etc. Boomerang Blade does deal the most amount of damage in a single ability compared to any other attack of any marksman, but Sivir herself is not a spellcaster the way Lucian and Ezreal are. The bulk of her DPS still comes from auto attacks. Ricochet is a cool ability concept as it causes her next 3 auto attacks to splash onto nearby targets in a similar fashion to Jin's Dancing Grenade. This is a quick 3 auto burst ability when combined with her ultimate's passive attack speed bonus, so you can get 3 shots in a short amount of time. Her W isn't that bad in terms of numbers, but 75 mana cost is definitely steep for a buff where most other champions only expend about 40 to 50. Having said that, it only applies to her next 3 attacks and deals no bonus damage on hit or anything like that, it just gives her a temporary static shiv buff. In order to help with her high mana cost, Riot gave her a spell shield for her E, allowing you to completely nullify the next hostile spell cast and restore mana. Basically, Sivir gets an on-demand Banshee's Veil spell shield every 10 to 22 seconds, although it lasts only a second and change, so you have to time it well. On paper, it's a great ability because you can use it to block really impactful things like Ashe ultimate, Darius ultimate, Garen ultimate, things like that. In practice, it's sort of an underwhelming thing to have for an ability. Lastly, her ultimate On the Hunt alongside the W attack speed buff grants a long-lasting movement speed buff to her entire team. Early on in League's history, this buff had so much value because mobility wasn't as plentiful back then. Sivir's ultimate was game-changing because it made her entire team way faster than anyone on the enemy team basically, so she could use this to force hard engages or even use it to give her teammates a chance to escape. Fast forward to 2021, almost everyone in the game has at least some kind of movement speed boost or dash. If they don't, there are so many items in the game that give dashes and movement speed boosts like the ones I mentioned before. There are other champions that give wide area boosts to make teammates go faster like Karma's Defiance, Sona's Song of Celerity, or Seraphine's Surround Sound. There's even an item that does the same thing, Shirelia's Battle Song, mind you, not to the same length. But the fact that there are so many other champions and even items that grant the same kind of effect without taking up an ultimate slot is what makes this ability not as amazing as it used to be. I think you get the point by now. Sivir's fundamental problem is that she just feels replaceable. She's really weak against tanks and bruisers due to having no % health damage or on-hit modifiers, and she gets completely outclassed by other hyper carries with way more self-protection like Vayne and Kai'Sa, or stronger area pressure like Aphelios and Twitch. None of her abilities are really all that great because they don't provide anything special to the table. Her passive, ultimate, and E have been replicated into items, and other champions, even AD carries, have better versions of her abilities. What I find a bit strange about Sivir is that when we think of a hyper carry, we think of someone with either really big damage or really wide damage, and consistently high uptime, right? For example, Twitch's Spray and Pray gives him a massive 850 attack range, bonus AD, and his attacks all deal splash damage during that time. Since Twitch usually reaches 2.0 attack speed or higher, he could probably throw in 10 or more auto attacks during that time, and if you go AP Twitch, that leads to massive burst damage with Contaminate to finish off anyone who survived his initial onslaught. Thanks to Vayne's true damage, she can chainsaw any champion in front of her, be it tanks, bruisers, squishies, whatever. It makes her one of the best front-to-back AD carries in the game. Kai'Sa can front to back, but she can also back to front, diving towards the backline and melting squishies before turning on the tanks who lost their carries. Samira straight up dashes into the middle of the enemy team, and Katarina ults, which resets if she gets a kill. All of these champions have insanely high DPS and multiple ways to handle a fight. Frustratingly so, Sivir's uptime is vastly lower than her peers despite being the OG hyper carry. For starters, she has no bonuses to her auto attacks outside of Ricochet. No % health damage, no true damage, no on-hit magic damage, nothing like that. Jinx's rockets deal splash damage and have massive range. Caitlyn's headshots do like 270 bonus crit damage or something ridiculous. Lucian gets 2 auto attacks with every cast of his abilities. Vayne's autos do true damage, Kai'Sa does % missing health magic damage. Twitch applies a true damage bleed, Misfortune does up to double damage on every new target. Xayah's attacks pierce through her targets with her feathers, Ashe's auto attacks slow, Draven's attacks do bonus damage with spinning axes, Kalista can jump with each attack, Samira gains bonus movement speed and charges her ultimate, Vars does magic damage and racks up blight stacks, Aphelios, well, I don't know what he does, but he does something, I promise you. Tristana is pretty much the only other AD carry that doesn't have any bonuses to her auto attacks, but she makes up for it with a really high attack range of 660 at max level. Sivir has a base attack range of 500 and is the only AD carry in the entire game to lack an auto attack empowerment outside of Ricochet, which only gives a 3 every 12 to 6 seconds. She was touted as an incredibly strong teamfight marksman, but the tools that allowed her to do that were gated behind counterproductively high mana costs and cooldowns. Granted, she could circumvent the mana issue with Essence Reaver, but aside from that, she's missing a lot of permanent DPS in her kit since she's missing so much uptime for practically no reason. I already mentioned in my Kalista video that high movement speed does not matter if you have to be in melee range to attack, which is the one strength that ranged champions have over melee, which is their range. Sivir can extend her range artificially with Ricochet, striking someone in front of her to reach a target behind, or using Boomerang Blade as a poke. But that leaves her with a 4 to 7 second window where she's essentially unable to do anything without getting dangerously close to an enemy champion, and her only protection is a spell shield. Again, that spell shield can block a critical ability, but if you're staring down an Aatrox or Hecarim, what the hell is that spell shield gonna do? Absolutely nothing. The way her abilities were designed is incongruous with her supposed theme of being a strong siege champion and teamfight carry. This gets exacerbated over time as more and more champions are released and reworked to fit the modern, more high-tempo, high-uptime League of Legends. Continuing on to the last point, Sivir's playstyle is very honest. She has no stealth like Kai'Sa and Vayne, no long-range bursts like Twitch and Misfortune, no crazy dash potential like Samira and Kalista, no long-range kiting like Caitlyn and Ezreal, or no long-range pick potential like Senna and Jhin. She has only one way to approach a fight: hit whoever is right in front of her. She can't flank, she can't dive, she can't do any of the fancy stuff other champions can. She's just a very honest champion. Her play rate is directly affected by her balance changes. Let's go back to that chart I showed you at the beginning of the video. We can see here that her most recent spike in popularity was in early to mid-season 9. That was because her Q received a massive buff. Boomerang Blade's damage was no longer reduced from hitting champions, meaning, in a teamfight if her Q hit only champions, it would deal the full damage to each one. It vastly increased her damage potential. Going back to early season 6, her Ricochet did a lot of splash damage and was also able to critically strike on the splash damage. Those two changes are what caused her play rate to skyrocket because, again, her damage was significantly magnified. But not a couple weeks later, Riot nerfed her, which caused her pick rate to plummet soon after. Sivir can only be popular if she's really strong in terms of numbers, since she has a really low skill ceiling and really limited options in a fight besides auto-attacking. One might argue that the reason she's picked in competitive more often than solo queue is because people can make better use of her ultimate as a coordinated unit. Yes, that is true. But that reason alone is not enough for her to be desirable when you have someone who can do way more than just deal damage. With no extra tools in her kit aside from physical damage and a boost to movement speed, Sivir is just a really outdated champion. So normally I leave it up to my viewers to discuss what should be done to address these issues, but I want to propose my own this time. Humor me for a moment. First, I think her Ricochet should function as a toggle. Make it similar to Jinx's Rockets to where every auto attack costs mana but has the bouncing effect. This means Sivir can permanently have Ricochet activated whenever she wants to use it, but can switch it off to conserve mana. Naturally, because she can use Ricochet more frequently, we might want to lower the bounce damage. Second change I think is to make Boomerang Blade have some kind of bonus effect if she hits someone with both shots. Maybe reducing armor, because one other problem with Sivir is that since she has no on-hit bonuses, she's one of the worst AD carries against tanks or bruisers. That could maybe fix the issue to where you could throw Q into the entire enemy team to shred armor then make your attacks hurt that much more. Depending on the numbers, that may either be an appropriate change or too strong. I'm just theory crafting here. The third change is to remove her attack speed passive on her ultimate and give it to her passive to where whenever she casts Q, W, or E, she gains bonus movement speed and attack speed for a short time. That can make using her high mana cost abilities feel worthwhile, especially if you're in the middle of an intense fight and you could use an attack speed buff. These are just surface level ideas for Sivir. I didn't think too deep about it, but what Sivir needs is a bit more flavor in her kit, ways to make her feel more rewarding to play. For example, the armor shred on Q rewards players who aim their skill shots well, or those with good resource management and timing can make use of her attack speed buff and Ricochet, things like that. So let me know what proposed changes you might have for the champion, or if you think she's perfectly fine as is, please let me know why you believe she should stay that way. Thank you to everyone who watched all the way to the end. If you enjoyed the video, a rating would be much appreciated, and if you'd like to support my channel, best way you can do so is like the video, leave a comment, share this with your friends, and subscribe. If there's a champion I haven't covered on either why no one plays or why everyone plays that you would like me to work on, consider making a donation to my Patreon page, as patrons can put in a request for a specific champion. Aside from that, all links to my other platforms can be found in the description below, and if you want to watch any other Why No One Plays videos, there's a playlist you can check up. I have, as of this video, I believe 26 or 27 of them, so if you still have free time then please enjoy the rest of them. But thank you all so much for watching this episode, and I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Take care.